success. There are many, many requirements for winning in a world characterized by change and in a competitive world. The two that I want to talk about with you this morning briefly. The first one is number one in my mind because it is most important. And that first requirement for winning in this changing world is more accountability and less victimhood. And the second requirement is, again, back to the title of the book. It is active, broad participation. And for those who are in leadership positions, effective facilitation of what I refer to as the relentless search for better ways. So the two requirements we've got, more accountability and less victimhood, and the second requirement, active participation / facilitation of the relentless search for better ways. Let's talk about accountability for a minute. More accountability, less victimhood. Accountability, would you agree, gets a lot of airplay, doesn't it? Have you noticed that people talk a lot about accountability? Have you noticed that most of the talk about accountability occurs during election season? I don't know if you've noticed that or not. And since we are obviously in a never-ending election season, then people who are running for office are all stepping up and making the same promise, aren't they? That I, if elected, will return accountability to, and then you fill in the blank, the Oval Office, or accountability to the Senate, accountability to the House, whatever it is. And I don't for a minute doubt that we all agree accountability is desirable. But I am convinced that we have only scratched the surface in terms of understanding what it is. And I'll just throw a working definition that I've developed for it, and then we'll work back to that. As I see it, accountability is acknowledged ownership. Acknowledged ownership of the choices we make and the consequences those choices produce. Are you with me? Acknowledged ownership of the choices we make and the consequences those choices produce. And I would further elaborate by saying all of the choices and all of the consequences. And the reason I feel compelled to elaborate with that last statement is because most people I've encountered are perfectly willing to acknowledge their ownership of choices that have produced good results. Would you agree? If we've got a team that we put together to produce specific results and, man, they hit a home run, and we walk into the room and say, how many of you participated in this process? They're not me. But if they produce no results, or if they were terrible, and you walk into the same room and you ask the same question, I'm not saying they wouldn't raise their hands, but it would be, yeah, me. Or it might more be what? I did what I was supposed to do if only he'd done it. You understand? Blaming is one of the things. So, acknowledged ownership. If we are going to engage in the search for better ways, would you agree with me that setbacks are inevitable? Would you agree? We're going to engage in some sort of trial and error, so setbacks are inevitable. And I submit to you that we always make choices about the setbacks we encounter. And I would finally suggest to you that there are two perspectives that we use when making the choices about assigning the meanings to the setbacks that we encounter. And the mental choices we make about them determine our response to them. Would you agree? The two perspectives that always come into play, one or the other, victimhood and accountability. I submit to you that when we encounter setbacks in our culture today, we make choices about that setback, and we make choices based on which perspective we use, victimhood or accountability. Which of the two do you think is more popular in our culture today? I'm guessing that victimhood is, and I'm guessing that the reason is because it's what? It's easier to be a victim, isn't it? Because if you accept ownership, then you also accept what? Some obligation to do what? To try to correct or learn from the setbacks, to avoid the setbacks in the future.